Greetings and salutations. My name is OJ as always, and welcome to the first official episode of the Deadlockathon. Yes, I am gonna call it that, where I go over every single character in Valve's not so secret hidden game, Deadlock, a MOBA hero shooter with a cast of characters that I really like. I'll be going over every single character, as I just said, from Abrams, which is today's video, as I'm sure you can tell from title and thumbnail, to Yamato, who is currently the final character alphabetically, as that's what I'm going to go through it as, alphabetically. I'll be discussing their lore, though of course keep in mind that there isn't too much, and if there is, I may miss some, because, you know, this is a work in progress game. I just need to stress that Deadlock is a work in progress game, so a lot of what I'm going to talk about or say may at a later date be changed, but think of this video as a time capsule of how a character exists as they currently are. I'll be talking about their lore, as I just said, their gameplay and all of their abilities and the such, and how you may play them, as well as their design. And I'll also mention stuff about their personality, because unlike my previous series, which for some that don't know was on Dead by Daylight, these characters obviously have voice lines and personalities and stuff that I can discuss. Though do keep in mind, I'm autistic, so if I don't really get a lot of social stuff correct, there's your reason for that. But with that said, today's video is going to be on Abrams, who I would argue is the kind of face of Deadlock, the protagonist, quote unquote. And to start this video off, we'll be discussing his lore. Now, as I just mentioned, please do keep in mind that a lot of this lore is work in progress and blah blah blah, that sort of stuff, but I'm going to start by reading off Abrams' in-game background, as every character, if you hover onto them in the character select screen, will have a little book in the icon, or in the icon? A book icon in the corner where you can read their backgrounds, and some of them are longer than others, and trust me, there's some really funny ones and some very long ones. But with that said, Abrams' background reads as such: hard-hitting, hard-headed, and hard-drinking. Detective Abrams has been a fixture on the New York investigating scene for years. From stolen art to missing persons to ritual murders, Abrams didn't just take any case that came across his desk, he solved them. But his days of following cheating spouses came to an end the day he opened his office door and found the tome sitting on his desk. No instruction was left for him, save for a brief note scrawled in onyx blood that read, "Don't let them have it." Abrams hasn't figured out where the thing came from, but seeing as his home has been broken into, his office tossed on 3 different occasions, and his car firebombed, he has a vested interest in figuring out what the hell is going on. Decent enough, you know, it's a simple explanation of who he is, what he does, blah blah blah, and as it says, he is a detective. And I would also like to mention that Abrams is a race of people known as a Ixian, which I didn't even know that was a thing in Deadlock, because I'm going to be honest, this is a lot of my first exposure to the lore of Deadlock. But Ixians are, to put it simply, basically demons, and they do vary from, you know, person to person. For example, someone like Abrams has, you know, the kind of the cliche devil horns and the tail, but his skin is obviously blue. And someone who is also an Ixian is Infernus, who, as you may know, is just a black dude with fire powers. He doesn't have the devil horns or the tail in any way, shape or form, but then someone like Abrams doesn't have the ability to control fire. So Ixians seem to differ a decent bit between the you know what I'm saying, they differ from person to person. Though most or some Ixians do have a control of fire, it's not just Infernus. I feel like I should mention that. But yeah, he is an Ixian, which I didn't know was a race in Deadlock. And yeah, he's, like, as a personality, he is quite, you know, a bit of a by the books fella, I would argue. He's kind of like the rough and tough detective who always gets the job done, which, you know, is a cliche, but it works, and I do like how Abrams is portrayed when interacting with other people. I would also like to mention that he is one of the few characters who we actually have a confirmation of a voice actor for, because although all of these characters in game are voice acted, some are not confirmed, whether that be due to a lot of the ones that are confirmed are usually due to slip-ups, like someone will accidentally say something, or will data mine that someone is voicing someone else, So not all of them are confirmed, but when they are confirmed or, you know, speculated, I will make it a note to mention it. And in Abrams' case, he is voiced by Samoa Joe, who, funny enough, has worked with Valve before on Dota. And weirdly, I do actually know who he is for once, because I played Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. Try say that name 5 times fast. Where in that game he was the final boss. he was even portraying. He even portrayed himself. He wasn't like it's Samoa Joe, but he's also voiced by Samoa Joe in the English dub, which was odd. That was kind of funny, but a little bit odd. But yeah, Abrams is, you know, your rough and tough detective type, and who I would argue is kind of like the protag of Deadlock. There isn't really a protagonist per se, but he's gotten a lot of attention added to him, mostly due to the fact that he was always on the original main menu before they recently changed it. And there was a novel, which we shouldn't really have access to, but you could access it through code, which was known as The Binding of Oathkeeper, which is a visual novel kind of centered around Lady Geist, and has, you know, stuff and bits and pieces of Abrams in it. Though I don't know the full extent of what that visual novel is like, because I've not actually looked up anything about it. And yeah, he's a cool dude. He's a simple character, I would argue, but a cool fella. And to end off this little section talking about his personality and lore, he likes to drink whiskey. That's it. That's what we're going to end it off on. But yeah, with that said, we're going to transition to something a little bit different compared to my previous series on Dead by Daylight. A criticism that I got a lot was that I didn't show what I was talking about when it came to gameplay. So for this next segment of the video, I'm going to switch to using OBS to record the gameplay as well as my voice at the same time, and show you in the training range what I'm talking about and how Abrams is kind of played in a sense. So yeah, I'll see you in, for you, what will be like 3 seconds, and what for me may be a couple minutes. So yeah, I'll see you in a second. Now, before I can actually begin to show you gameplay and such, actually before I begin, I must mention that if my voice sounds a slight bit different, it's because, as I said, I've moved from using Audacity to record my voice to OBS mid-recording, just so I can, you know, talk and show gameplay at the same time, which is, you know, useful for you, useful for me, etc. But before we can actually begin and show gameplay, I would like to mention that on this screen, the character select screen, you're able to view stats, as you can see here. And funny enough, I didn't know that his weapon was called Case Closed. I just want to point out a small little thing that I just noticed. As you can see, well, on this section, light melee for Abrams, you know, I'll mention this and go into it a bit more detail, but Abrams, by all accounts, is a melee character, I would argue at least. You can definitely play him that way, and it's kind of like the defunct build for him, at least in most scenarios, right? It says, right there, that light melee does 50 damage, and heavy melee does 116. Now, if we go to Bebop, someone who, you know, although can do melee, isn't actually really a melee character, he's more of a spirit character, his light melee does 63. Why does the melee character do less light melee damage than the not melee character? Dunno. No clue at all. But anyways, that's just me noticing small little details, etc, etc. So, to start with Abrams's main weapon, that being Case Closed, his shotgun revolver, because yes, it is a shotgun. It has 9 bullets in the mag, and you must reload each one individually. So if I were to empty the entire mag, you will be spending a long ass time reloading, which makes it so that in most scenarios, you want to be reloading as Abrams as much as you possibly can, outside of, you know, like actual fights and such. But anyways, moving on from his actual gun, because let's be honest, what is there to really talk about his weapon? It is a shotgun pistol. Or shotgun revolver. You want to be up close and personal with it, but honestly, all of Abrams's kit, you want to be up close and personal. I'm going to be completely honest. And to show that fact, the first ability, Siphon Life, which allows you to drain health from nearby enemies in front of you, dealing spirit damage and healing a portion of the damage dealt, which, by the way, the ability looks like this. It's a small cone in front of you, shown by the sort of blue line. I should probably make it so we have no cooldown, so I can consistently show this stuff. But it creates, like, the sort of barrier here, and I suck life from this enemy, and if I was damaged, I would be, you know, healing myself. Now this ability, like every other ability, can be upgraded. It has a 42-second cooldown, I must mention that as well, and of course it also does a certain amount of damage, which scales with your spirit. It has 60% lifesteal on hit and has a 4-second duration. On its first upgrade, its cooldown will shorten to 23 seconds, its duration will increase to 6 seconds on a second upgrade, and its actual damage will increase to 70 at base at level 5, and as such will last this long. In this state, by the way, you are allowed to still freely attack and punch, etc. And you can obviously, you know, still move around and the such. His second ability is known as Shoulder Charge, which, I mean, come on, it's probably self-explanatory. The Shoulder Charge, the Shoulder Charge looks as such, and you can sort of control it. And as you just saw there, if you collide with any enemies, you will drag them along with you. And you'll get a boost of speed if you do manage to drag someone with you. But when dragging someone, hitting a wall will cause them to be stunned for a certain amount of time, which, of course, will open them to melee attacks or gunshots, etc. Now, stats-wise, it does 37 damage and does the displacement status effect, which makes it so you can't really do anything. You kind of just have to get carried. The stun duration is 0.6 seconds at base, and on its first upgrade, on collision, you'll do 25 extra weapon damage for 8 seconds, which, by the way, weapon damage applies to your melee, which, you know, or your melee damage scales with your weapon damage, which further incentivizes Abrams to be a melee character per se. Its second upgrade makes it so the stun is 1.05 seconds, and its final upgrade makes it so its cooldown is only 15 seconds. So, the stun is, you know, it's enough that you can get a heavy attack in on its second upgrade, which is why most builds for Abrams usually go to get Shoulder Charge to level 2 and then move on to other stuff. But anyways, with that said, his third ability is a passive, so no active here. You get passive words. Upon taking damage, you temporarily will regenerate a portion of the damage taken, and at base it is 12% of the damage you will take, and it takes 20 seconds to regenerate said health. You also passively get an extra bit of health regen. Now, at level 1, that health regen will go up to 2.5 health per second. I presume it's per second. At level 2, you get an extra 150 health, and at level 5, it is 19% of the damage that you take regenerated. Simple as. I don't really need to show that, that's self-explanatory really. And his final ability is known as Seismic Impact, which, upon activating, you leap into the air before crashing down into the ground, dealing spirit damage and applying a stun, which looks like this. So you're kind of floating, you can move, and then if you crash down, it knocks people up and stuns them. This is basically his ultimate. Every character's fourth ability will be their ultimate, unless it's, you know, something else. I don't think there's any characters where the fourth ability isn't the ultimate, but anyways, I'm just yapping. At base, it does 55 damage, its impact radius is 10.5 meters, and its stun duration is 1.5 seconds. Now at level 1, its cooldown goes from 185 seconds to 150. At level 2, on hero hit, you get extra health as well as extra fire rate, which obviously is useful when you, say, hit multiple people. And at level 5, on cast, you get Unstoppable, meaning you cannot be stunned out of it through either items or abilities that the enemies have. And as such, I'll show the extra health you get on a contact. Bang. It's 970. Is it permanent health increase? Hold on. Oh, okay. I thought it was a I thought that was a temporary increase to health. No, it's permanent. Okay, yeah, that leans into one of his other playstyles. And speaking of, when it comes to builds, which you can, by the way, of course, I'm sure many of you already know this, but the build browser is genuinely a lifesaver for someone like me, who isn't particularly the greatest when it comes to building characters. I'm not very smart, I'm going to admit that. But for Abrams, I would argue there are 3 different pathways you can go down. 2 of them kind of merge into one, but there are in my opinion, 3 different versions. This one is a crayon gun belt. I'm sure you can imagine what this means. Instead of punching people, which is, usually the go-to, you will be just shooting people. You'll be trying to stun them as much as you can and just shoot them with your shotgun in close range until they die. Simple as that. The second type of build is, the one that I've mentioned a few times now, which is punching people. Abrams, because of how he works with, the siphon close up, the charge applying a stun that gives you enough time to land a heavy attack, as well as this also applying a stun, he's kind of encouraged to be a melee character, and as such, he's quite good at being a melee character. However, that can result in 2 things. Some people may see Abrams as a bit of a mindless character. You kind of just walk up to a person and just heavy punch, light punch, as much as you possibly can. But remember, the enemies can parry. If they parry one of your punches, you're probably dead, I'm going to be honest. So there is a bit of complexity into playing out Abrams in sort of like whiffing your punches in a sense. Like, say, charging it and then flicking your camera off to the right-hand side to avoid a parry and then, turning around and then punching them. Because after you parry, there is a sort of delay if you miss it. And yeah, and there is also a third build for Abrams, which I'm sure you saw here, which people are calling Green Abrams. This is where you just become a tank and you just don't die, like, ever. Abrams is, as I now know, very good at being a tank because of seismic impact giving you the extra... it does only last so long. Okay, my bad. It isn't permanent. Correction. Mid-video, it's not permanent. It's 25 seconds. I did not see that before. But that extra health, as well as, him just having passive better health regen, passively regenerating damage that he takes, etc., can result in just Abrams being an unkillable wall with, say, a build like this. And yeah, that's kind of how you would play Abrams, or the ways you can play Abrams. You can go down the gun route, so shoulder barging people into walls and then just shooting the shit out of them, or shoulder charging into the walls for a melee build where you just punch them a bunch, or you can be your team's tank. Those are what I would argue the 3 ways to play Abrams. And in all honesty, I've never seen anyone use Spirit Abrams. I don't think that's a thing. If it is, I'm shocked, because props to that guy, because Abrams' abilities just don't do a lot of spirit damage. Like, they're mostly utility based. Like, this is obviously, the siphon is mostly to, keep yourself alive in the fight whilst you do other stuff. The shoulder charge is, to stun people so you can do weapon damage. And even this is meant to, apply stun and give you a boost to your fire rate and your hero health to make you more tanky or shoot better. So, like, everything that Abrams does is kind of revolved around guns and punching or being a tank. There's no, like, incentive to use a spirit build. Though I'm sure maybe someone in the comments will provide me with an example of how a Spirit Abrams could be totally broken. I just have never seen it in my entire life, gonna be completely honest with you. But whilst we are here, if I remember rightly, I'm able to create a bot. And whilst we're here, right. So this will allow me to discuss his design in a easy sense, even though he's kind of looking in a weird direction. This will be the section on design, by the way, because I feel like it's easier to kind of analyze a design in the hero sort of thingy, because of course I could, click here and look at the design here, which, by the way, this render looks really fantastic. But obviously, by having the model here, I can kind of go over the entire model. So, but anyways, with that said, as I said earlier, Abrams is a Ixia. I think that was the name of it. I believe that was the name of it, which is, as I said, again, demon. Basically a demon. Now, his outfit is very stereotypical detective stuff, right? The long trench coat, the sort of suit pants, and the sort of suit shoes? Suit shoes? White button-up shirt, tie, very simple outfit for a detective, but with the added addition of him being quite, bulky. He's very sort of square man. Like, yeah, he's a very square man. He has a very square silhouette. But in terms of a facial design, he has, you know, sort of a stubble, but with a bit more hair around the beard and the mustache. He has a cigarette in his mouth 24/7. Glasses, glowing red eyes, a broken horn, which I'm not sure why he has a broken horn. I will admit, that's probably a lore reason for it. His gun itself is, as I said, a revolver shotgun, which is very large. Like, that's a very big gun. And as I mentioned in his little lore segment, the tome, which is a magical book, which we don't really know much about, or at least I don't know much about. It is a magic book kind of chained to him. So as you can see, there's like a handcuff on his wrist. And besides that, yeah, he's a relatively simple design, but easy to understand. Like, you kind of look at Abrams and you can kind of get the vibe that he is a policeman or a detective or something along the lines of an authority figure, per se. And yeah, I like his design. It works quite well for, you know, like a simple face of the game, per se. And it's still stands out. It's simple, but it stands out, which is obviously, you know, good. That's what you want for a pseudo protagonist of a, you know, multiplayer shooter. Could he stand alongside giants like, I don't know, who was the face of Paladins? Obviously the face of Overwatch was Tracer until they switched it to Kiriko. I still don't really like that decision. I still think Tracer works far better as the face of Overwatch. But for Paladins, it was Androxus, wasn't it? Yeah, Androxus works as the face of Paladins, I suppose. Unfortunately, Paladins is a dead game now. And I don't mean that in, you know, the sort of corny sense, like, it's got no players, dead game. No, seriously, they cut support for the game. The game's going to be dead in like 6 months or something. It's unfortunate. I do love Paladins, but I'm going off track again. But yeah, in terms of design, I do like Abrams, although he is a bit simple when compared to, say, other characters in the roster. But then again, a lot of the characters in the roster, outfit-wise, are relatively simple, because the game's aesthetic is a kind of 1950s sort of vintage detective feel to, like, it has a sort of, how do you explain it? It's got a 1950s feel to it. Like, it feels like maybe akin to like a Saturday morning cartoon from the, maybe I'm tripping. How do you explain the aesthetics of Deadlock? It is kind of just like 1950s detective feels. Kind of giving me some Fallout vibes every now and then, but less like retrofuturism as Fallout's is, and more like nitty gritty. Like, you kind of get what I'm on about. Like, it has that sort of vintage detectives movie vibe to it. Like, yeah. I'm gonna end it off on that. I think that's I think you guys kind of get what I'm talking about. Though some of the characters don't necessarily fall into that vintage 50s vibe to it, I do think on a general there's a 50s feel to this game, and I think Abrams is a really, really good example of that. The sort of hardened detective is a cliche of, you know, 50s films, per se, and I think Abrams is a nice spin on it, per se. I'll say it 100 times over. Yeah, I think that's it. I think this is the end of the video. I've gone over lore, gameplay, design, personality, etc, etc. So yeah, this is the end of the first episode of the Deadlockathon, as I'm going to call it. I hope you have enjoyed up to this point, and if you found this video informative, or you enjoyed it up until this point, like, comment, and subscribe if you feel so inclined. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and for those that made it this far, if you can prove to me on Steam that you have subscribed to the channel, you can unsubscribe immediately after if you're that bothered about it. I'll send you a code to play Deadlock if you're, you know, interested in playing the game, because one of the main things I want to do with this series of videos is to spread even more awareness of Deadlock. I know it's currently on a high right now because of all the new hero releases, but more people playing this game is better, because it shows I want to get people into this game. I enjoy it a lot, and it's a game that I can obviously give out codes to because, oh, shocker, I'm playing it and I own the game. So yeah, I'll throw my Steam account and friend code up on screen. If you wish to add me, just message me proof that you've, you know, subscribed. You can unsubscribe again if you are that bothered about it, and I'll send you a code to Deadlock. Yeah, with that said, hope you have a lovely rest of your day, whether that be a good morning, evening, afternoon, etc. And the next episode in the series shall be on none other than my beloved robot man, Bebop.